Every month, Gameranx sorts through the most notable new releases coming up, and we're doing that right now. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on Gameranx, the top 10 new games to check out in July 2022. Starting out with number 10, Loopmancer. Loopmancer is a really fast-paced 2D platform game with 7 large levels where you play as a detective who is also very good at martial arts and handling weapons, traveling through a cyberpunk city that has some of your more typical cyberpunk sites, as well as some things that actually are surprisingly grounded in a more realistic aesthetic. This game's graphics are pretty good. Like, the people are obviously meant to be stylized and have very exaggerated movement. And that's neither a criticism or a compliment. It's more a matter of taste, whether or not you like that. But the environments are absolutely gorgeous in this game. Add that into how fast-paced and fluid the action looks, and you got what appears to be a pretty interesting side-scrolling action game. Loopmancer is coming to the PlayStations, Xbox One, Windows, and Nintendo Switch on July 13th. And number 9 is Endling, Extinction is Forever, a side-scrolling game with some incredibly stylized graphics where you play as the last mother fox on Earth taking care of your fox children. The idea is you have to help them when they're in trouble, teach them how to live, and ultimately save them. The point, obviously, is the survival of your species in a world that is falling apart. It's a post-apocalyptic game that is clearly intending to say something about climate change, but doesn't seem to be particularly preachy about it. And because of that, the concept looks like it is something that could work out pretty well, actually. Again, it has kind of escort mission vibes, so I'm concerned about that, but the stylization of it is really interesting. It's got a great color scheme, and the different environments look very cool. It's at very least notable and worth a try, and I'll certainly be doing that when it lands on PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC on July 19th. And number 8 is Madison, a psychological horror film where you connect the human world and a beyond world in order to see what's going on. You take pictures in order to see what's going on in the other world as you solve puzzles, and of course work as hard as you can to not die. The story of Madison is you wake up locked in a dark room, your hands are covered in blood, you don't know what's going on, and you're apparently part of a gory ritual that began many decades ago that you have to participate in and perhaps even finish. This is a game with a lot of that kind of hyper-real scariness where things move weird. They actually had to push the release date of this back because it was going to be released in June, but they didn't realize that the Steam sale was happening the same time as their release date, which would basically get it swallowed up in a big sea of sales and other purchases, and it most likely would affect the game because a game has to launch well for Steam to want to continue to push it, algorithmically speaking. So Madison is coming to PC, PS5, Xbox Series X, PS4, and Switch on July 8th. And number 7 is Live Alive, an exclusive RPG to Japan up until now, where the original developer eventually became involved with the Octopath Traveler project, which is a game very much along the lines of Live Alive. Live Alive is a bunch of short stories that take place across time rather than one large story with a bunch of smaller stories in it that serve the main narrative. And as the original developer was working on Octopath Traveler, he really wanted to remake Live Alive with the new graphical style because the original really didn't compare to a lot of the RPGs of its time. And Square Enix wanted to remake a lot of these games, so they did it, and it's now being released in the United States. Looks great. I mean, incredible. It's certainly a graphical style that lends itself to what they created with Octopath Traveler, and I'm definitely excited to see more games come out like this because it's proving to be something that's popular. Live Alive is coming on July 22nd to Nintendo Switch. And number 6 is Digimon Survive, a graphic novel with survival strategy role-playing built in. So basically, this is a game that plays out like a modern text adventure, except it also has sections which have specific types of gameplay, including search mechanics, free roam, and free battle mechanics. It's definitely a different direction than you would expect something that is more or less a Pokemon-like to do, but it does focus on the story perhaps a little more than Pokemon does as a series, so it makes sense they would at least try this sort of graphic novel style of gameplay. It's also not exclusive to Switch. Digimon is of course not a Nintendo property, so you see it on everything, meaning the Digimon Survive is coming to Xbox One, PS4, PC, and Nintendo Switch on July 29th. At number 5 is F122, which is actually a big revamp for the game on account the Formula One World Championship organization introduced a large series of significant changes to the sport's technical regulations, meaning the cars have to be built completely differently, meaning F122 could not use any of the previous models, meaning they've completely remade every single car with updated physics. They've also created a new adaptive AI system and implemented support for VR headsets on PC. Considering that F1 2021 was among the best racing games of last year, nominated for the best sports/racing game at the Game Awards last year, I don't think they'll change a whole lot, but some iterative improvements are in order. F1 2022 is coming to the PlayStations, the Xboxes, and Microsoft Windows on July 1st. And number 4 is Azure Striker Gunvolt 3, which is, of course, Inti Creates' development of the Mega Man Zero style of gameplay that Kenji Inafune pioneered. This is one I've been looking forward to for a while because after the massive disappointment that was Mighty Number 9, the following year they actually did release the sequel to the original Azure Striker Gunvolt, and it was pretty good. That was back in 2017, and it's been a while. Mega Man fans will obviously recognize a lot of what's going on here, but it's definitely become a bigger affair than a Mega Man game is. Like, there's a lot going on screen at any given time. The attacks can be pretty intense, have a lot of effect range, but also they're taking advantage of higher graphical capacity while maintaining a pixel art style. It looks good. Azure Striker Gunvolt 3 is coming to the Nintendo Switch on July 28th. And number 3 is As Dusk Falls, a game cribbing pretty heavily from Supermassive style of gameplay, looking a lot like it's attempting to make something along the lines of an Until Dawn style game, except for there's also story segments with these very specifically artistically rendered 2D elements. But in particular, one thing they're really touting is the multiplayer, in that with Supermassive games, they generally haven't had multiplayer, and players have created their own means of doing multiplayer within these games that sort of makes them into party games. As Dusk Falls has that implemented from the start, and considering how heavily it looks like it is relying on the narrative, more so even than an Until Dawn style game, it's kind of simultaneously experimental and something you probably understand right up front. It's a narrative game based on your choices. We'll see exactly how this goes. It's one that's launching on both of the Xbox generations as well as the PC on July 19th. And number 2 is Xenoblade Chronicles 3, a game in which the events that happened in Xenoblade Chronicles 1 and 2, which both happened at the same time in parallel universes, will have their futures depicted in a new world, in a series that has taken its timeline in an interesting direction and finally seems to be having all of this stuff converge. That's good because the games themselves are incredibly fun to play, and they've added the ability to this one where you can have a pretty big party with up to 7 members at any given time. A large amount of the previous 2 game staff has worked on this one, so there's a lot of through line, and really there's not a lot else to say. It's a continuation of both the previous titles in the series, and that's great because it's a great series. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is coming to Nintendo Switch July 29th. And finally, at number 1 is Stray, a game in which you play as a cat in a cyberpunk world where there are no humans left over, but there are a lot of robots walking around. Your idea is to find your way back to your family, but I have a feeling you're going to end up uncovering some kind of wild mystery about humanity and where it went. It's a very interesting, free-roaming cat simulator that places a cat, like I said, in a large cyberpunk city and has you walk around. That seems seems like an interesting idea. It's always been something that's piqued our interest. We talked about this game for years, long before it was even called Stray, and it's interesting to see it finally coming out. Stray is coming to PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, and Microsoft Windows July 19th. We've also got a bonus game for you in the Klonoa Fantasy Reverie series, which features remastered versions of the original Klonoa, Door to Phantom Isle, and Klonoa 2. Klonoa originally came out way back in 1997. It's remastered. It looks quite a bit better. Originally, it was made on PlayStation. It was remastered in 2008 for the Wii. This is kind of the definitive remaster. It looks way better than it ever looked before, although it's obviously fairly simple in terms of its graphics, pretty cartoony looking. That's landing on the PlayStations, the Xboxes, PC, and Switch July 8th. That's all for today. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable notifications, and as always, thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at Falcon the Hero. We'll see you next time right here on Gameranx.